I want to thank my boy Simo Jenkins for letting me do these intros, man, out here. You know what I'm saying, man? We're going to get into a little bit of the good and the bad and the ugly of this week. But first, I got a little public service announcement for Zachariah Robertson.
You f***ed up. You f***ed up big time. You're incapable of running that shit. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change.
You know, personally, I thought with the game plan based on the walkthrough yesterday, I thought I was going to have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, sorry, fantasy coaches and anybody that bet on me. I think the Falcons just did a really good job. We called a bunch of the plays. We called the plays that we thought I was going to be open on, and next thing I know, there's 2 to 3 people standing in the window. So
blame Zach Robinson. I'll tell you what. Get this. Coming into this game, 53% of Drake London's targets were in the slot. Easy receptions. Let's get him in the slot. Let's get him moving. Let's create a mismatch. But in this game, of his 10 targets, only 2 came in the slot.
I gotta hop into the bird bath. What's going on, family? It's your boy Simo the C Mitchell checking in with another weekly Falcons bird bath by Play Game Official. We got my boy Hightower on. We're gonna do a little 3 for 3 today, and we're gonna get into the biggest 3 things that I think are issues in the Falcons loss, and 3 things that I like to change. But let's first and foremost. In recent news, Ray McLeod now has been cut. He didn't play the last 2 games. And we also have Michael Penix not playing. Well, we don't know if he's not going to play, but he was injured in the game recently, and they're considering him day-to-day right now. So there's a chance he could potentially not play. So I want you to kind of let people know what this bone bruise situation is like and what we could potentially be looking at with him as well, too.
Okay, so this is pretty simple. A bone bruise is pretty much when trauma happens to a weight-bearing bone, which is usually going to be from your hips on down, your hip, your femur, your tibia, your ankle, your feet, okay, even your toes. With blunt force trauma, or even if the joints are compressed and it causes irritation within the joint and potentially within the bone itself. It's not a break, it's not a fracture, but it's before all of that happens. If it's the severity of the bruise is low, it can last 2 to 3 weeks. If it's a moderate bruise, it can last up to 3 months. And if it's a really severe bruise, the person can be out for the season, believe it or not. The only way to remedy it is rest, ice, compression elevation, which is rice, of course. And the only other way to work with that is to let the person sit down and just relax, because there's no other type of way to speed up the recovery.
Okay. So if Penix were out, or if he, I guess, not if he was out, but if you're the coach, would you want to just go ahead and bring in Kirk and just sit him down anyway, just to prevent anything from potentially further getting worse?
I mean, the thing is that you have to look at your schedule, see who you're going to be playing the next few weeks. If you can sit him out, you should, just because it can be very irritating. It can be very bothersome. But if you want to get your money's worth out of your player and you want to give yourself the best opportunity to win, because you do have Kirk Cousins, he doesn't suck. He's not bad. He's shown that he can win, and he should know the offense. It's not a bad backup to have. It's not a bad choice to use right now.
A little bit with Penix, you were saying how he didn't look great throwing on the run, and he had a lot of inaccuracies. Where do you think that was from specifically? And what are your thoughts on some of that? I mean, one person I was talking with, they said something about, we were talking about I think that Zach Robinson probably goes to the deep pass too quickly for him. I know he's not necessarily been the greatest under pressure, and that's something that will need to change. He's going to have to become more accurate under pressure, but it does seem like they kind of go to that deep pass too soon sometimes as well too, and they don't let him get warmed up a little bit. But what are your thoughts a little bit on his? Did you see anything wrong with his throwing motion?
Yeah, so for me, the contrast from the first half of the game to the second half of the game is what really spoke volumes for me. The first half of the game, it seemed as if he was playing carefree He was having a good time. He was having fun. And his passes were a little bit more on target. Even if he rolled out, even if he stayed in the pocket, things seemed a little bit better. It seemed a little bit sharper. The second half of the game, I noticed that he didn't seem to be as accurate. And when he rolled out or he had to run and pass, most of them were very off target. I mean, even little dump offs, you were like, whoa, he led that guy a little bit too much. That seemed like an easy play. But I'm curious to whether or not there were any other things physically bothering him prior to that in regards to during the second half of the game. I'm really wondering, and especially for him to have an injury later on, it could have been something just as simple as he had a few little nagging things, little things that were bothering him physically, and then the bigger injury happened later. But it just seemed like two different players from the first half to the second half. If you look at his throwing motion, it seemed like he was laboring with throwing stuff the second half, trying to make things work as opposed to how easily they flowed in the first half. So there's definitely a question I have in regards to, I wonder if he was healthy the second half of the game, or as healthy in the second half as he was in the first.
For sure. As far as Ray McCloud, I think that's a huge part of the offense. And I don't know, maybe it's not quite as huge, but I do feel as though the Falcons do need another receiver. They could use another receiver added to the mix. While we've had Mooney back, he hasn't, been the old Mooney. He seems like he's been dealing with his injury a little bit as well, too. Recently, Tyler Lockett was released from the Tennessee Titans. Would
Wouldn't be
you
bad.
say again?
So that wouldn't be a bad choice. I mean, the thing is, he's a veteran. He knows how to win. He's been in pressure situations. You know what I'm saying? He knows what goes on to be a winning team. He knows what it takes. He knows how to run routes. He knows how to read defenses, go to soft areas. He knows he can make hard catches, easy catches, whatever. That's not a bad pickup. And he probably won't be that expensive.
I mean, I'm assuming that he has to be released from the Titans because the team isn't necessarily doing very well, and they don't seem to be using him very much and incorporate him into the offense. And I'm wondering, is that because he just doesn't have anything in the tank left? Has he lost a step or two?
I mean, even if he has lost a step or two, he's not going to hurt the Falcons at all. How about that? He's not going to hurt to have him.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it would hurt. I mean, definitely could use another receiver. He's probably got better hands and a better route runner than some of the other options that we would have on the team, aside from that. So, and again, this might just open up another roster spot as well, too. So, well, we're going to get into a little bit of the three biggest reasons why the Falcons lost this week. And I think first and foremost, it's Zach Robinson with first, off top, abandoning the run. And some of his situational play calling. But we'll get into that a little bit, the situational play calling. But as far as the run game, of the first 15 plays, 4 of them were runs. Then of the first 25 plays going through the beginning of the second quarter, 7 of those were run plays. So that's at an average percentage of around, 26, 25%. And that just ain't going to cut it, humbly, in my humble opinion. Now, of all those runs, Bijan was 6 of 18 on those first 7 runs. And Algier was the other guy for 3 yards on that. My thoughts are that running backs get stronger as the game goes on and all of that. Some people say that they shut the run down, but I gave those stats to kind of say, hey, they didn't try the run enough in that game early on. It seems like they get away from it too soon.
Okay, so technically speaking, if you look at what San Fran was bringing, of course, as you know, Warner was out. He's out for injury, so that's your top linebacker. One of the best ways to keep your middle linebackers at home so that they're not all over the place and you can have a good idea of where they're going to be is by running the ball. The first thing that I would think that a coach would do, offensive coordinator would be to make sure or to test the linebackers that are there and work them to the point where they don't even try to go out into coverage, that they stay at home because they're worried about the run. And that means you need to run the ball. They could have done more power running during the course of the game. I think that would have kept people at home. It would have opened the passing game more. But the thing is that it keeps pressure on the linebackers, and that's what you want. You don't want them to get to the point where they feel like they can do whatever they want and they're running around freely making tackles. You want them to always kind of stay flat-footed and to stay at home trying to make plays in the middle. And that's not what happened. They actually abandoned the running game to a degree much sooner than they should have.
Yeah, it seems like it just has a totally different feel and mentality for the team when you get out there and you run the ball more, and it also feels as though this would help Penix out a lot more.
If you can keep the middle linebackers at home, what happens is that you have more throwing lanes, medium throwing range passes and opportunities than you would if you let them drop in the coverage. So the average play that they run through Atlanta is medium to long range. They like to go to the flats also, but with Bijan being so productive, it opens the door to the tight end doing slants, receivers doing slants, pulls back in your linebackers, and then you can open up your offense and take advantage of the middle of the field and the medium range passes. But if you don't do that, if you don't show that you're going to run the ball a lot, you actually make it so that it's harder for the quarterback to really know what he's going to do when he comes to the line and have an idea of what's going to work without ad-libbing.
You feel as though that's making him a lot more nervous as well, too?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's going to deal with his confidence. I think that it just puts pressure on him to make harder throws. His throws have to go over the heads of defensive ends. It has to go over the heads of the cornerbacks. The lanes aren't going to be as wide open.
With the situational football, there's a little bit with Zach Robinson. Of course, third and short, some of those scenarios, I'd like to see a little bit more power running from him. But then also on defense, we had 10 men on the field in a key situation, and that put us at a disadvantage. Things like that, of course, is a coaching error, right?
What, the people on the field?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a player error. You're not paying attention what's next, but it could be the coach not letting you know from the sideline and the people that are on the sideline waiting to go in what the next play is going to be, maybe making your decision on what the play is going to be late into the clock. A last-minute change, and everybody doesn't hear it. So it's a combination, 50-50. But it's not going to be – it's going to be more on the coach because if that's his plan, the player should know about it. You got to run out to the huddle to play. So
Right.
If I'm not out there or I didn't come off the field, I probably found out about the play late.
Do you think that we'll see more dedication to the run moving forward? And do you think that we'll see better situational football? Do you think that we'll see more power running moving forward? Do you think that this is something we're going to get corrected?
Well, I'll tell you what, with Penix having a potential injury, you're going to have to. Okay? Just to let you know. They're going to have to rely on the run more because it takes you out of your normally planned or your vision for what you want for your team when your starting quarterback is out. Even though Kirk Cousins has been in that situation before, the plan revolves around Penix. The average team looks at the quarterback as being the foundation of your offense. And where he goes, that's where the team's supposed to go on offense. If your starting quarterback isn't in there, well, now we're looking at a lack of prosperity potentially in your offense because your main object, your main choice, your main support system, your main manufacturer of positivity or positive offense is now not in. So what's the next best thing? When you can, if you can run it. And they have two running backs that can run the ball. And we both know that, Algier and Bijan. So my thing is use what you have until you develop something else.
Why do you think that these coaches just, real quick, why do you think some of these coaches get away from the run and they get so pass happy?
Okay, so I'm going to give you my real answer. I'm going to give you, okay. money in many cases. The long ball brings in more money. The long ball is exciting. The long ball is the way of the NFL and has been for the past 8 years. Okay, um, especially when you're not like the Giants and the Cowboys and all those guys from those conference where it's grinded out football. People want to see things that are exciting. They want to bring in ticket sales. So long ball does cause a lot more excitement. Now they get away from it also because maybe they know something that we don't know. Maybe they're guards, maybe they're tackles, maybe they're not as apt to give up the job or do the job of blocking the way they could. Maybe there's a weakness there. But definitively speaking, you definitely need the running game. I don't, and it's not because I was a running back. The running game is vital to the passing game. So you need both.
It's real interesting because this team, it was basically built on offense by Arthur Smith. And I feel like Zach Robinson's philosophy potentially is kind of clashing with that. Now, it's ironic to me that him coming from McVay, he doesn't run the ball nearly as much as McVay did. But this team is built around being able to run the football, and that's kind of clashing a little bit with that. And that's why I kind of don't understand how Raheem isn't because we got Drake London out there. He's really good. If you, like you said, you can get the ball over some of these guys' heads a little bit more. Pitts can get a little bit deeper, but when you got these linebackers and these guys playing up close, and then when they know they can sit back because they know you're going to pass it, it becomes a little bit interesting. But that was an observation I noticed. Do you think there's a way to overcome that if they do, keep going that route?
I mean, the thing is, it's for them to win. Okay, you talk about McVay, you talk about everybody else. So listen, having a running game will actually add more value to the passing game, as we already said. The problem that you're having is that, like I said, I don't know if they have the luxury of believing in the running game as much as we do. You know what I'm saying? But what I do definitively see is their passing game, just because of the way that the offensive coordinator is implementing things, is not nearly as effective without the run. If they're running the ball and they're getting first down on the ground, the passing game becomes very easy. Very easy. And I don't know why the offensive coordinator is making it so hard. I don't know. He's really, he just seems like he's just a little confused at what he wants to do next. I don't know what that's about, but that's what I see.
The third reason that I saw, that I think the biggest thing that was a turning point, and the defense still played well, but once Divine Diablo went out of the game, you saw some of the tape as well too. I don't think J.D. Bertrand looks that good at linebacker. I thought he was going to be able to kind of step it up and step into his own. And who knows, maybe he'll be able to get a little bit more prep with a little bit more practice this week. He'll be better, but I don't think there's that much that he's going to be able to change. But me and you talk about that, how our linebackers aren't necessarily great block shedders. Diablo is a little bit better. He's better than the rest of them. He's more athletic, but Caden Ellis is a guy that you have to kind of point. He's really good at stunting, and he used to be a pass rusher in college, so he's really good at that straight line speed and being able to rush the passer from the inside gaps. There's Joshua Woods, who looked good in preseason. I'm not sure how well he is. I mean, he basically, and it looks like the Falcons have designated roles for both of those linebackers, like how they had it on their depth chart. It doesn't look like one is the backup for both of them. They like them, it seems like, in specific ways. Wood seemed a little bit more athletic to me, but Jalen Walker's been hurt, and he might be set to come back this game. Do you think that we could potentially see them mixing it up with him there at the beginning of the season? And I'd love to see that. I think that'd be a great thing as outside looking in. But Raheem said he wanted to give him a home there first at the edge. Do you think that messes up the mix of what's there? Because we have Braylon Trice, I think, coming back too.
No, I think that, listen, you're going to have to mix it up just to make up for Diablo not being there, just to give opposing teams a harder way to scheme up an offense to go against a defense of such. If they were to mix it up the way that you're proposing, all you're doing is adding more athleticism to the defense. You're adding in tackling angles and lines that wouldn't normally be there, you're making it so that now it's prevalent and they're doing something different, but you're adding more speed. Now, with that being said, what we definitely need to make sure of is that these individual players wrap up when they tackle. Because once you get these guys coming in, you don't want just shoulder tackles. You need wrap up. So if you were to add this extra speed, this extra agility into the defense and mix it up so that it's harder to prepare, I'm just praying that these guys really, really go in there with the mindset of making every tackle count.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason that, and I've seen a few people mentioning moving DeMarco Hellams in there on some obvious passing downs at linebacker, or one guy said on obvious passing downs. I saw another person say just moving him in to replace Diablo instead of having J.D. Bertrand, and I just don't see it against the run, having him in there in nickel situations as the second linebacker. That essentially puts you in a dime formation in that way. What's your thoughts on that? Because DeMarco Hellams would be a bit undersized at linebacker, having him in there.
I mean, the thing is that they're filling gaps, though. So it's not that he'd be undersized. His job would be to, so to speak, put your finger in the hole when there's a leak in the dam. Okay? So size has nothing to do with that. He'd be the guy putting his finger in the hole, keeping it from flooding, which means.
Well, 245 or 250 is a bit, even 230 is a bit different than 203.
Yeah, definitely. That's why he's putting his finger in there. I didn't say he's putting his body against the hole. He's sticking his finger in there. He's not going to be there all the time, though. That'll wear him out. But situationally, they could use that extra speed and have him put his finger in the hole, stopping a few little leaks. Long term, not a good answer. Not a good answer. It might work, but he might not like it at the end of the day. Them ice baths he's going to be taking.
That's true. Moving on, we got the Dolphins coming up this week, and Dolphins aren't really good against the run. Their offense isn't necessarily that great. Do you think that? I mean, you think this is a get right game, or you think this is a trap game?
No, I'm going to tell you what. Let me just, first of all, you got to remember, my man Tua, he leads the league in multi-interception games the past 3 years. He leads the league in multiple thrown interceptions. So, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, I believe that the Falcons are due for a bunch of interceptions. So that works in their favor, I think. Two is they should definitely be able to run the ball against Miami. Even though they have low pass production, also they haven't been getting much out of Tua in regards to high volume numbers and receptions. The Dolphins are still scoring about 21 points a game, so Atlanta has to score points to beat them. It's just that I don't see there being a problem with them beating them as long as they're able to score the points that they need to score. On average, like I said, I think that 21.2, 21.7 points a game, almost on average, even though they're losing. So their defense isn't much. And that's really, I don't really see it being a problem. I don't see it being a problem. I don't think it's one of those games that I'm worried about them losing. But, of course, it is the NFL. Anybody can lose on any Sunday, Thursday, or Monday. So I pray that it's not Atlanta. I think that this should be a bounce-back game. I think that it shouldn't be a problem for them, but it's an opportunity for the coaches, for the staff to get a few things that have been going kind of wrong, make it right, and not live off the Bills win week to week.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, especially with Devon Achane with Miami's offense. He's one of the biggest key components that actually is working well on there. I don't think he's necessarily great with their rushing attempts, but he's out of the backfield a lot. He's using.
He's good. He's good. See, the thing is, like I said, he can run. Like I said, if Atlanta can score over 21 points, they should win this game. Even if Dolphins give them a hard time, they have to score over 21 points. They have to score over 21 points. Just because the numbers show it. If they don't allow the Dolphins to score 21 points, good for them. But Atlanta has to be prepared to go for at least 28 points in this game. They got to push. They have to push the ball into the end zone. And if they do that, Bijan should be very productive. Pitts should be productive. Penix should have a decent game. I'm not saying he's going to go for 400 yards, but I think he should go for 190, 225 if he does it right. I really do. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know Bijan had, even last game, even though he didn't do great, he didn't have a lot of rushing yards, he was still 92 yards from scrimmage and still quite productive for us. How much more effective do you think it is making sure that how much more important is it to get him the ball in that, well, we've already talked about that with the running game, having him with it. It's so weird seeing him get away from that running game. It seems like Zach Robinson thinks that just getting him the touches regardless is okay, but they're really not utilizing Algier.
He's just sitting on the side. They treat Algier in the manner in which they used to treat, or even now, when you have a fullback.
Yeah.
And he may be in the game all season, and he might get under 20, 30 carries in a full season and might score a touchdown. They're treating him as if he can't run the ball or they don't believe in him. And yet, he's very effective, and he's the perfect complement to Bijan for what they should be doing.
Right.
They're wasting him on the side, putting him in once or twice, and that's it. He should be a normal part of the scheme. Just because when you have listen, as spoken earlier, if you have middle linebackers that are hurt, or you have your second or third string guys in, man, you run that rock between the tackles, something crazy, just to mess things up. So if you have an opportunity to run power ball, you let Algier pull him in, you let Bijan string him out. 1-2 combination. They have them sitting right there on the team together. Everybody knows they're capable of doing it, except it seems for the offensive coordinator. So I don't know what's going on with the coordinator.
Yeah, it's interesting. He only has 57 carries on the year, but like you said, he's very effective when he does get the carries. If you were Tyler Algier, would you want to re-sign with the Falcons next year?
I mean, I don't know how much he's making. And the other question is, where would he go? So he would have to do his homework. His agent needs to do some homework. I wouldn't go anywhere if I'm making good money initially. But you have to look around the league and think about, where could I go where they would use me properly? Because right now, most teams have decent first and second string running backs.
I was thinking that too.
I mean, they're not all superstars, but for the most part, they're doing their jobs and they're being used. You got to remember, this is a league in which you don't have premier running backs where they just get 30 carries by themselves a game. It's always a combo, thunder and lightning, type of thing. So it's better to have two nowadays that can do the job than to have one that does the job. So right now, he is legitimately the thunder while Bijan is the lightning. I don't know if they want to mess that up. They need to use it, though.
Yeah, so one thing that I've heard a lot from people is even going back to the 28-3 thing with the Falcons and the Super Bowl, it's like, oh, Matt Ryan should have audibled out of that into a run if he knew that they needed to run the ball and keep the clock running. Or Dan Quinn should have,
He should have never turned the ball over.
Well, there's that too, but they say that Dan Quinn should have vetoed the play call of Shanahan, and even now it's like, well, Raheem should step in and say, no, we're going to run the ball more. How does that play out? If you're the head coach, are you alienating? Because I always tell people, I'm like, as a professional, you have to allow these guys to coach and do what they're doing, or else you might lose the team. And of course, if you veto something and it doesn't work out, now it's on you as well too. But I mean, do you think there comes a time where Raheem needs to just step in and say, "Hey, no, we're going to do this," or do you think that maybe he's even complicit with doing that as well too, if it's ultimately is?
It's according to the power that the organization has given the head coach. Some owners have head coaches and assistant coaches, but they don't want certain decisions to be made by the head coach. It sounds crazy because you're the head, but sometimes Jerry Jones, people want to be in charge of almost anything, making calls from the phone up in the box. Okay, I don't think Arthur Blank's like that, but I don't know exactly how the hierarchy works for them. I would suggest that I'm the head coach um, for certain things. So Raheem should have
Right.
the power to say, we're not doing that, we're doing this. But I don't know how they working down there, but definitely there's a few things that I think Raheem should interject. Now, mind you, I don't know, maybe he is and they're not listening. Maybe he is and they got something on him. Maybe he is and it's just not working. I don't know. But things are questionable.
Do you think? Could you see a scenario where Raheem fires Zach Robinson this year, the way that they did with Jimmy Lake last year? Do you think it's even that
I think
egregious?
it happened. I don't think it's going to be Raheem that fires him, though. I think that it would be the ownership that would fire him more so than Raheem. In many cases, when you have, let's just say the coaches get along with each other, they don't really want anybody to be fired because everybody's on the same page, quote unquote, in ideas um, and in schemes. Whether it's working or not is a different story. Do I think the potential is there for the offensive coordinator to potentially be fired? Yes, I do believe it's there. Do I believe that it could be the head coach? Well, nowadays, yes, even though I don't like it. I think that people are hired and fired too quickly. You're not giving people a chance to develop. But that's the way of professional sports now, especially in football. It's about what can you do for me now as opposed to what can we do later. But do I think that Zach is questionable in regards to staying with the Falcons? With what they have, yes, I do.
And kind of revisiting and piggybacking off what we said earlier, with people being hired and refired too soon. Like I said, this team was built by Arthur Smith. Do you think that Arthur Smith as a play caller is better than Zach Robinson is right now, or was better as a play caller? You've seen him a little bit in Pittsburgh, and do you think that if he had Bijan Robinson, not Bijan Robinson, but just a better quarterback play, that he'd be doing better with this team than what they're doing right now?
Don't know. I don't know. All I can say is that when Atlanta looks bad, they really look kind of mediocre.
Right.
And it's almost as if you believe almost anybody can do a little bit better than what they're doing when things are bad. I know that it would be hard to do any worse when they're not working. When things aren't working for Atlanta, I don't know how worse you can get. When things are working, great, of course, everything looks nice. But right now, the up and down that you see every week, it can be very frustrating. And to know that they have so much potential and to see so much explosiveness in 1 week and then nothing the next, it can be very, very, very overwhelming and frustrating to not only a fan, but to ownership. So there's a big light over my head with a question mark next to it. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think that Raheem is necessarily a bad head coach in general, but ultimately, if you've hired these guys, then it does fall back on you essentially because you made that decision. Aaron Donald talks really highly of Raheem. A lot of people talk about him being a player's coach, and they think he's not very discipline oriented. And of course, we see things like the 10 men on the field and all that, and it's hard for us to say that he is. But Aaron Donald does think that he has that fiery side and disciplinary side as well too. So it is interesting.
No, I'm a big fan. Like I told you before, in other podcasts, I'm a big fan of Raheem, and I mean he's from up my way. He's from up here in Jersey, and I know his origins. I know his ideas. I know why he thinks the way he thinks, and he does many things that he does just because I know where he comes from. Being a player's coach, I don't see why it wouldn't be. I don't see why I see why people talk highly of him. But like I said, just because those are things that I see does not mean that's what the organization is looking for that would make that organization prosper. Maybe he should be in a different place. I don't know. But I will say that the sparks of positivity that are evident, definitely he's had a part or a hand to play in that.
Right. Yeah. So do you think that the Falcons right now still make the playoffs? And what's your thoughts of the NFC South now with the way it is? Because you had Tampa Bay recently lose to the Lions with who basically had their third string secondary out there.
That's okay. Do I think they still make it? I believe they still make it. If they can just get the couple of things right, I think they squeak in if they can just get it together. I still believe that they can make it in.
Yeah, because Panthers are right now second in the division. They're 4-3. Falcons only 3-3. Of course, they play less games, but
yeah. But the thing you got to remember also, it's not as if you only have one dominant team in that anyway, in regards to record wise. So everybody else is still trying to get table scraps. So it's going to be a rough road because nobody's really winning big other than Tampa Bay. Okay, even record wise.
Right. I am wondering a little bit if these injuries are going to be too much for them to overcome. The last couple of games they haven't. They weren't able to score as much this game. Mike,
okay, you still got you're not even halfway done. So listen, I've seen teams do more with less. I'm going to believe that the Falcons are going to get themselves together, even if it's ugly, and still make the wild card, worst case scenario. And if they lose after that, they lose after that. But I believe that person by person, player by player, that they have all that they need to actually make it in. Now, what they do after that, I can't call.
For sure, man. All right, man, that's our time, man. We're going to wrap it up there, man. And we'll do a little bit more takes on some of the extra, on some of the keys to victory later on this week. And a little bit more analysis once there's a little bit more insights and we kind of see where some of the who's playing, who's not going to be on the injury report, because at this point there's still kind of like I don't think it's their first full padded day.
They didn't have to report everything just yet, so you're going to find a lot more by tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow's Wednesday.
Yeah.
They have to report. They have to report by Wednesday latest because you have Thursday night football.
Right. Absolutely.
So they have to report. They got to report because it has to be known for that the line in Las Vegas.
Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate you tapping in, Hal Tyler. We'll check in with you later, man.
High Point game. Look here. Don't get too wet. That bird bad boy. That water getting kind of cold, boy. Temperature changing.
All right, man. Peace.